You're listening to the Outdoors Group podcast. This podcast is a call to arms to get children and young people outside again. It's your one-stop shop for all things outdoor, child, young person and education related. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm delighted to be joined virtually on Teams by Mike King. Mike is the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Head Teacher at Releasing Potential, an independent school for children with special educational needs in Hampshire. He was also the Chair of the Board of Trustees at the Insitute of Outdoor Learning for many years until he stepped down recently. He's here today to talk to me about the work he does at Releasing Potential, his experience with the IOL, the concept of choice-informed approaches to education and how that works within an outdoor context. Thanks for joining me today, Mike.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really glad to have you here. I think the best place to start is probably at the beginning. Can you tell us about your journey to where you are today, kind of where your roots are?
Yeah, funny enough, I know you guys are based in Devon, and actually my roots start in Devon. So I was brought up near Exeter, and we used to go up to Dartmoor. Woodbury Common would be a common place. Sidmouth, Exmouth, all those sorts of things. That I'm one of four boys, so I think Mum and Dad just wanted to get us out of the house and do outdoor things. So yeah, so that's sort of where it started. And then my dad decided to do early retirement and go on to do a theology degree, and I could have moved with them, but I just thought I really don't want to learn how to be a groundskeeper. So I went to this open day, Bicton College actually, again, Devon. They talked about outdoor things. And then just by chance, totally differently, I managed to get onto what used to be called a YTS, Youth Training Scheme, which is like an apprenticeship in the outdoors, but based on Lake Windermere and based at Tower Wood, which is still owned by Lancashire County Council. Please keep owning it. It was brilliant. Yeah, so I did a YTS there at 16. I was not a high achiever, so I didn't even get the grades to do the national diploma at the time at Bicton. So I had 3 GCSEs at grade C, a D, an E and 2 Fs. So I did the YTS, lived up in the lakes, lived in a caravan there for a while, then moved to Camp Windermere, which was north of Low Ray campsite, opposite Ambleside, and lived in a tent whilst learning how to teach.
How long did you live in a tent for?
3 months.
Okay.
3 months. So it might have been longer actually, but I think it was about 3 months. I remember I had a little 50cc motorbike, which was my transport at the time, and it was packed with all my rucksacks and everything else. And I turned up, and I was shown my accommodation, which was basically an orange Vango 2-person tent, and that was it for the summer. And it was
in the Lake District. That's quite chancy, isn't it? How dry it can be.
100%. So, and to do our washing, we created this plastic dustbin with a dolly where we just put the washing inside, and yeah, I mean, I think I probably just smelt and was slightly rotten all the time. So then after doing that, I then did go back to Bicton actually, and I did the national diploma in outdoor leisure studies, and retook some GCSEs, which was great. And then you had to do practices. So I then went and did outdoor ed in Northern Ireland, Letterkenny, Republic of Ireland. And that was great. And then I did a degree, a PE teaching degree in Cheltenham, which had outdoor ed as part of it. And that was where I really formed some close outdoor based relationships actually, which still hold today. And that was really good. Managed to get some summers doing outdoor centre work, taught in Kenya for a summer as well. That went out there for 3 months, and a variety of things like that. And then I was always teaching in special needs environments, always teaching. So it was a 4-year degree, and you always had to do 2 lots of 10-week blocks of teaching. And each block was either in an inner city school or it was in a special needs school. And so I was just drawn to the SEN side, and it just happened to be that's what I was good at. So then I met my wife and we moved down to Chichester, didn't have any jobs, but was looking to do some work in special needs and teaching, etc. So managed to work at Chichester College and started to do outdoor things then. And meanwhile, I was going off doing stuff myself. And then after a couple of years, I thought, do you know what? I want to teach more children. I don't want to teach my class of 20. I want to teach more than that. And actually, the outdoor things I was doing, we can do more than this. So in 2000, I went part-time and started just working anywhere and everywhere. So I worked in secure units, homes, pupil referral units, SEN schools, inner city schools, every concept of education. I worked just partly to earn money and partly just to see what was out there, really.
Yeah.
And then 2001, we set up Releasing Potential.
Oh, you've been there for quite a long time.
Yeah, so last week was our 24th year, according to LinkedIn.
Really? Okay.
So, and then about 9 years, so we did a lot of work with pupil referral units, SEN, etc., etc. Very much alternative provision, and in the early days, some youth work type things, lots of taking children from the south coast up to North Wales, that sort of thing. And then, in about 8-9 years ago, the government changed the white paper and every child had to be associated with a school. So we thought, okay, let's start our own school. And, we looked at the national curriculum and I just thought, actually, this doesn't fit our children at all. So then we created our own curriculum. So we now have an independent school which has 5 core subjects: maths, English, personal social development, food studies and outdoor education. And then they can also do sport and CDT. So so then we've got 43 children in the school at the moment.
Okay.
And then we've also got our own alternative provision as well on the side. So, and then all the time, bring it back to outdoor education, particularly probably between the age of 25 and 36, I'd spend every year focusing on getting a qualification.
Okay.
So in the end, I ended up at a level which, senior instructor level across the board, having focused on everything. So whether that's level 3 paddling as was, or whether it's SI sailing or mountain leader, and just focusing on that. So when we're teaching children, it's not just a taster session. It's an aspiration where children can think, actually, maybe I can go climbing on the cliffs of Dorset, or maybe I can sail on my own around the Isle of Wight. So so all the time, these other things were happening on in the background.
Amazing. Loads going on. You must have been really busy getting a qualification every year, because there's a lot involved in a lot of these outdoor qualifications. Yeah,
definitely. I think it was just the only way I could think of doing it, really. It was a bit frustrating because I did my first ML assessment before I was 18 because I was because Tower Wood was such a good centre. Yeah. They used to run them, and so I used to hop onto those type courses. And
that's really unusual to do it before 18, isn't it?
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to register it. It was just come along for the experience.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I redid it actually in North Wales with what was Kent Mountain Centre then, and that was great. It was really good training actually. And then it wasn't until I was 36, almost 10 years later, that I actually did my assessment, just because being on the south coast, getting your days in just takes a while.
The mountains are a long way away from the south coast.
Absolutely. And you're scrabbling around thinking, can I include this? And is it above that? Did I really do 6 hours, or was I actually only away from the car for 3? All those things.
It was when my instructor said to me, you can't do any more in Brecon. And I was like, but Brecon is so close to Devon.
Okay. Yeah, it's getting to a minimum of 3 areas, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's much easier, I think, if you live a bit more north than we do, but there we go.
But then SI sailing, I was able to go out every weekend and it didn't really matter. So, swings and roundabouts, I guess.
Swings and roundabouts, exactly, yeah. So, I'm going to go back to Releasing Potential. You said it's been running for 24 years, which is quite impressive. Like, what does it actually look like? Like, we know it's a school for kids with SEN and you've got an alternative provision, but what's and you wrote your own curriculum. So what does a day look like there? Or, how does school look like for those kids?
So as an organisation, we have several different sites. So we have two main sites, one in Chichester, one in Havant near Portsmouth. And they are on very small industrial estates. And they are made up of classrooms, offices and workshops. And the reason for that is the belief that our children ultimately will probably end up in some sort of working environment that is similar to these small industrial estates. I did think about, it'd be nice to have a nice leafy place and all the rest of it. But the reality is our children will probably, that's where they go end up working. So let's get them in that environment. And a lot of our children don't like the word school or the look of school. So actually, to avoid rejection straight away, that's what we've done. And then around that, we have a sailing centre, a woodland site, a very small farm, and another alternative provision just surrounding both of those. And the children arrive between 9 and 9:30, and they'll be greeted by tea and toast. And we'll see how their day went. And, we might be playing cards. We might be, looking to, do all sorts of other things around taking medication, taking phones, etc. Their lessons start at 9:30, and they have two blocks of the day, morning and afternoon. But in each block, there are several lessons. So a morning might be maths first and then cooking. Now, some of our children, that's fine. That's great. But actually, the reality is they might only manage 10 minutes of maths, or they might have to have some creative way in which to do maths. And with the cooking and food studies, we really believe that our children have a very odd relationship with food. Either they eat too much, they don't eat enough, they don't know what's right to eat, they don't know where it's gone, So we're trying to create this relationship with food that's much more healthy. And so that's all very practical. And then most afternoons we'd expect children to be outside, going out to one of the sites, doing something, even if it's a PSD lesson, personal social development, we'd still expect them to try and be outside, try and be active. Most of our children are, when the child chooses to come to us, because we're an independent school without national curriculum framework, we're very clear on we are very outdoor based. And so actually some children might look around and go, actually, this isn't for us. We don't want to be so. And that's okay. That's okay. But so a typical day, so then some of our children will arrive with lunch. Some of them, our chef would have cooked them some lunch. So everyone has a meal. And then end of the day is around 2:30. And then they'll go home and the staff will do a write-up, debriefs, etc., etc. So we have quite a lot of involvement with multi-agencies and the home, etc., etc.
Excellent. And you said you've got 50 kids at the moment, 48?
We're registered for 50, so we have 43 in the school at the moment. And then we have 12 in our alternative provision.
Keeps you busy.
So the alternative provision, what's really neat about that is it really is very much linked to our school. So we might work with a child whilst they're registered at another school, and then they slowly integrate into our own. And so there's the transition of that is much, much easier. And then we're really building the relationships with other SEN schools run by local authority so that they can then feel supported, so there are 3 tiers. The government say there are 3 tiers in education. Okay. So, tier 1 is 80% of the children, population in school.
Okay.
So my child who's in school at the moment, she'll be in that 80%.
Yeah.
Need minimal support. Then tier 2 is 15% of the population, and that's where they may need some support. They might be in a pupil referral unit. They'll probably work better in a smaller group. They might have an education healthcare plan, but they can still follow a national curriculum framework, and they can still follow those small groups.
Yeah.
And then tier 3 are 5% of the population, and they are children who really need a bespoke education package.
Okay.
And they will generally have an education healthcare plan, and they would be the types of children in our school, and obviously you guys in your school. And we're really, that's what we're focused on, is those tier 3 students.
Yeah.
And actually some of our children, if they're not coping with us, often they might well go on to a secure unit, etc. So that's quite different to, it's a different world, isn't it, when they go on to those things. So we try and make sure that they can hold on to their places with us and be successful. Yeah.
As much as possible. And how did your role at the Institute of Outdoor Learning tie into all of this? So can you tell people about who might not know what it is, what the IOL is, and when you kind of joined them and what you did with them? And I know you're still with them, so like
no, that's fine. So Insitute for Outdoor Learning had come about, and funny enough, my first ever boss who was running Towerwood, he was part of the people up in the Lake District who brought together several interested groups that gave birth to the Institute for Outdoor Learning.
Okay.
So and it probably happened. So I was there in 89, and it probably happened around then.
Okay.
And the idea behind the Institute is that it's a professional body for organisations and individuals who use outdoors to make a positive difference to others. That's what it says on the website in front of me. But actually, it's a landing place for people working in the outdoors.
Yeah.
Some of the key things around it is the team are very focused on making sure that it provides a voice. So through COVID, very involved with that. Very much a community. So we're trying to bring people together, trying to support workforce, trying to make sure that, some of the professional standards. So, Roger Hopper, who's done the National Outdoor Learning Award, he's been great in being able to create that and then provide it to everybody in the outdoors. And we help, it's a good example of Roger came to us and said that I've got this, and we supported that, and that's, facilitating things. And then standards as well. So if, we've got some managing challenge behaviour training that we deliver internally. And we were saying, okay, is this of a good standard? And we went to IOL. So I got involved probably, about 20 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
Quite a long time ago.
Yeah,
so it was at a time when I really needed to meet other people in the outdoors and make connections. And there were several options, and I landed on IOL. And then I became chair of trustee, I think, I became a trustee 15 years ago, and then I was chair for about 7 years.
Okay.
And that was through the COVID years and all of those sorts of things. And
quite challenging time to be the chair.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was an interesting
really hit
time.
Some of the outdoor centres, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, people like Andy Robinson did a very good job. He was the previous CEO. And he just did a very good job of being a voice politically for IOL and outdoor centres. And it's very difficult and it's very hard. We would receive emails saying, why are you not doing this? How do you do that? This is unfair, etc., etc. And it was heartbreaking, really. I think it was a bit of a wake up call for the outdoor sector to go, okay, who are we? What are we about? And at the time, IOL with various others was trying to come together under one roof. But although that didn't work out, what came about from all of that was understanding, well, who are we? Well, IOL decided we wanted to be a voice for others. We wanted to be a platform so others could exist and service and administrate people. So it was an interesting time. But fortunately we've come through it, and, the Institute is definitely stronger.
Yeah.
Because of those relationships we made really through that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So organisations can be part of the IOL, can't they, as if they're an outdoor kind of learning or education kind of related thing?
Yeah, so they can. So we have a really good job site. So advertising jobs, we're probably the biggest in the industry for that, and organisations can join. And there's 3 tiers of joining, and individuals can join. And we also have a student rate as well. And we've just had the Northwest conference that was really good down at Lowray as part of the near Ambleside, as part of that at the FSC Centre. So, and that's just been that was a great conference with just bringing a whole variety of people, academics, practitioners, all sorts, where then conversation was happening.
Yeah.
Wasn't just inward looking. It was also, okay, what's happening around, how are we going to respond to this? Amazing. So yes, if anybody's interested, please go to outdoor-learning.org and
find out more.
And the team will help you. Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. We might come back to them in a bit, but I'm going to go back to education. You've obviously been working, well, not that that's not education, but back to the hands-on stuff. You've obviously been working within education for, well, sounds like your whole career, and you've probably encountered many different educational philosophies over that time. We've talked about quite a few of them on the podcast, but when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you mentioned Glasser's theory about choice-informed approaches to education, and that's one we haven't discussed. So, could you tell us about this theory?
Yeah, so years ago we were working with our types of children, and then Cowshot Centre at the time, which is owned by Hampshire County Council down the other side of Southampton from us. We were connected with them just through knowing them, and they said, "Oh, how do you work with these children? They're really difficult. Could you come down and do some work with our staff?" So we went down and we explained what we did, and we realised actually we needed something to hang our approaches on. Yeah. Because actually there must be someone who's more, cleverer than us, who's written something about this and done some research. So we came across Glasser, who's created a theory called choice theory. And the thing that Glasser's trying to achieve through this choice theory is the simple premise that every individual has control over their own actions. Okay. And actually our ability to influence others really stems from how we empower ourselves to act. And one of the things that he believes is there are 5 basic needs for all of us. And those basic needs are love, joy, freedom, power, and survival. And if you don't have those in balance, you're going to try your hardest to make them in balance. And so what we looked at, the more we looked at it, we realized that the negative behaviors that we're seeing really are coming about because a child's trying to meet one of those needs. And we then linked it to things like neuro-linguistic programming, where you're starting to understand the impact of positive language. So rather than say, don't do this, you're saying what you do expect. and you're all the time trying to make sure you're meeting those needs that the child's seeking. So a really good example, excuse me, is that the other day I was, in fact, a really good example of not doing a very good job, actually. A child walked out of our climbing area with a carabiner. And I said, oh, let's have a look. What have you got there? And he gave it to me. And then I said, oh, great, I'll put it back. And that really upset him. That was it. Everything was, he started being very angry. And
because he wanted to hold on to the carabiner.
Yeah. And he wanted the power and control of having that carabiner and choosing when it went back.
Okay, yeah.
And I really stuffed up on that process, because actually what I should have done is given it back and said, great, I look forward to you putting it back. And then a few days later I went to see him, and he was pushing a wheelie chair in our corridor. I was like, oh, hi, what are you up to? Oh, I didn't like the wheelie chair in the classroom, so I'm just moving it around. I was like, okay. And I said, oh, I meant to come and see you and apologise. I said, I shouldn't have taken it off you. I should have trusted you to put it back. And immediately his demeanour changed. Yeah. Because before that, it was like, oh, Mike, and I won't say the words. Immediately it changed. I said, oh, I should have trusted you. Yeah. And then I said, so what are we going to do about this chair? And he said, oh, I don't like it in the classroom. I said, yeah, I understand that. And it's not about you, but what about other people? What are we going to do? Because other people want to race on it. Oh, what do you think you could do better with that chair? And immediately he puts it away. Yeah. Now, two different approaches with two very different outcomes. Yeah. One, I did not recognise the basic needs that Glasser was talking about. Yeah. I disempowered that child completely. And then two, I empowered the child and I allowed them to make a choice. And they made that choice. Yeah. And so Glasser's approach is really about us understanding who we are in a situation that allows others to be who they want to be. And we all have a lens. We all look at life in a lens. And that lens is created by our life experiences. You can't do anything that's not negative. It's not positive. It just is. We all have it. Yeah. And so if we can understand what we're trying to meet ourselves in our basic needs, then we can provide opportunities for others to make good choices. Yes. So this also, so we don't restrain children at all. So we do quite a lot of mending, and we try and get a child to help mend as well.
Quite a lot of mending?
Yeah, so if they've punched a wall and they've broken the wall, I'd expect them to help mend it.
Help fix it. Okay, like literally mending it. Okay.
Yeah, literally mending it. And obviously this is linked to restorative justice and all those sorts of things. But what we don't do is we don't restrain. Yeah. And the reason for that is we want the child to make good choices. We want them to feel empowered. The other thing with restraint, you take away that choice and you also alter the relationship between the adult and child. Yeah. And you say, I'm big, you're small, etc.
How do you... Oh, sorry to interrupt. You go.
No, it's fine. So, which also links to Bloomstein, another theorist that's done some work on being the adult. Yeah. And when you are the adult, that means that actually you have to make sure you've had a good night's sleep, you are eating well, you're healthy, you're making good decisions, because then you can bring that all into this choice theory around allowing a child to make good choices. And obviously the other thing with it, with what Glasser talks about, he talks about being in a child's worldview. So if I talk to you about walking, I know that that's one of your things, and I will immediately have value in your worldview. And actually, even as we talk about it, you're smiling more because I've talked about walking. And I'm immediately in your worldview, and I have value. And so we've got to think about how we can be authentically in a child's worldview.
Yeah.
So I had to listen to a child talk about drill music the other day. It really is not my thing. It's 100 miles away from where I am. And he had made some up. And so actually I'm interested in the child. So I'm going to listen to it. Yeah. You put yourself aside and you listen to it.
And that's easy to do, right? If a child's enthusiastic about something, you just let them share their enthusiasm with you, right?
Yeah, I think some subjects are easier than others is what I would say.
I mean, to be fair, my middle son is on the pathway to an autism diagnosis, and he has the kind of special interest, and he had Warhammer for about 18 months, and he lived, breathed and slept Warhammer. And yeah, there were days where I was like, I can't hear any more about which models you need and how many points they can do and what damage they can do. And it was hard work to try and retain interest for 18 months in this thing that's not my cup of tea at all.
100%. And I do think that, what you're clearly demonstrating as well is that's the thing that we remind our staff. We only have these children from 9 till 2:30. Yeah. The family has to maintain that Warhammer interest for all the other hours in the day and the weekend. And that's hard work, that is hard work. Yeah. So, yeah.
Can I go back to the restraint? I've just got a question, and I'm just curious. So if you've got a young person that is, dysregulating, how do you make sure that you're keeping them safe and the other kids safe and your staff safe? Because I know that that's often why people use restraint, because they say, well, we're trying to keep, the school community safe. But yes, I'm just intrigued to know what your kind of approach is in that situation.
Yeah. So one of the underlying philosophies, I guess, of releasing potential is a quote which said, "To take risks is to risk failure. However, the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing."
Oh, I like that. Who said that?
Oh, do you know what? It's one of those quotes that has been, if you look it up, there are about 100 people who have said it. Yeah. But, some people, anyway, it's one of those quotes. It could have been Winston Churchill, or it could have been an American president or whoever. Yeah. But anyway, it was, and the reason for saying that is I understand the argument to keep people safe. I would argue that it doesn't always keep people safe. Now, I would frame this in the fact that some children cognitively need to be restrained. I totally accept that their cognitive impairment or their cognitive ability requires support to them to regulate their behaviour. I 100% accept that. However, I also believe that a lot of children are restrained as the first resort by adults. Yeah. It's the go-to thing. And they don't take the risk of allowing a child to make a choice. So we've been doing this for several years. We are, every year there is a child who will want to kick a door in, etc. Very rarely have I seen a child or another adult injured. Okay. And it's generally because the adult has tried to stop the child doing their action. In order for our approach to work, everybody has to be sold out to it. Yeah. You cannot do it by half measures. And so if you see a wall being punched, you go, what are you doing? That's daft. You just could hurt yourself. So you don't so one of the key things is, so we do this thing called challenge, ignore, divert. So you challenge the behaviour. Absolutely. You 100% challenge it. You then give a child a choice by ignoring it.
Yeah.
And in that space, and this is a section which people will go through, and then you try and divert them. So you go, oh, why don't we try and do some art instead? Or why don't we try and do X? Or do you want to come and walk our dog? Or all those things.
Yeah.
And yes, things do get broken.
Mm.
And we do have a great team who mend things. But what we don't do is damage that relationship between the adult and the child.
Yeah.
We maintain that relationship. And we also believe that the child can make positive decisions.
Mm.
And we believe that they can choose better outcomes. Now, the other side of it is so one of the other parts of the theory that we use as our managing challenging behaviour is every choice has a positive intention. So that child who had the carabiner, their positive intention was to maintain power for themselves.
Mm.
And I totally ignored that positive intention. If we believe that every action has a positive intention, it allows us to understand why the child is trying to meet one of their 5 basic needs.
Yeah.
We may not agree with it, might be terrible, but you start to understand why a person does what they're doing.
Yeah, why they behave the way they are.
Absolutely. And it is also that thing around separating the behaviour from the child.
Mm.
So their behaviour might be what they're trying to communicate, but it might not be who that child actually is.
Mm.
And that child could be completely different. But their behaviour, they're trying to communicate something around meeting those 5 basic needs.
Yeah.
So going back to if we restrain, we completely disempower that child to make a choice.
Yeah.
But the only way of bringing that into any organisation is with our children is everybody believing in it.
Yeah.
And the being prepared to mend things in the building. Mm. But I'd rather mend the building than have to mend staff or students.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah.
Great. Good answer. And it's actually a nice segue to my next question, which is to do with behaviour discipline. And obviously, you know, the punitive approaches, which are kind of widely used in mainstream educational settings, obviously aren't going to fit within this model. So, like, it'd be good to talk about. I mean, I guess it's kind of what we've just been talking about already. Your challenge, ignore, distract. What was the 4th one?
Challenge, ignore, divert.
Divert, that's it, yeah.
So, and there's a way of which we ramp it up, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So one of the things we use, in fact, again, it came from, I came down to Devon with an officer in Hampshire about 20 years ago to look at the pupil referral units that were being run at the time in Devon.
Okay.
And they were using Every Child Matters as a framework to track and applaud, recognise positive behaviour.
Yeah.
So what we did was we brought that down to 5 basic things, which we called SHAPE, which is safe, healthy, achieve, positive, and enterprising. And each one of those has to be achieved in a lesson. So that's what we want to happen.
Okay.
And then shapes, you then collect your, so the whole premise is, I don't know if you remember this as a child, in my primary school, we used to have a jar, and if you were good, you got a marble put into the jar.
Oh, yes,
And when the jar was full, great. Now, the downside was, if you're naughty, marble could be taken out.
Yes, I remember.
So our whole premise was, you cannot take away positive reward.
Yeah.
Okay? So what we're trying to do is you award a shape, and then after a certain amount of shapes, we want you to get to Friday afternoons and a choice of activities. That's what we want you to do. And the less shape you get, obviously the activities become less. So now the premise on this is if shape is awarded, so you have a booklet, and it is all to do with what your targets are on your education healthcare plan. And so you'll have one of your targets on your shape book about, have you achieved that? Have you been this? Now, if you get there, great. And if a member of staff awards it, great. What we don't do is, if a child's been out and they've had their outdoor ed session and they come back and then they're all heightened because they've had a great time, they've had a lovely time, and the member of staff says, oh, you've got to be quiet, and they say to that member of staff, F off. Yeah. What they don't do is lose shape. The member of staff will challenge, oh, don't talk to me like that. And some of our children, they'll come in the morning and they'll tell you to F off as a way of welcoming and a way of saying, and one of our children, it's like, oh, at least they're communicating with me, Yeah. Now, they're not going to lose shape over it. Yes, we challenge the language and we challenge what is said. But actually, when they've been brilliant on an activity or they've been brilliant in a lesson, yeah, absolutely, they've gained their shape because that's what their target was about. All these other things, they will come along as they feel like they're able to make better choices, etc., etc. Yeah. So it's all, so punitive approaches do not work at all. No. So we used to do quite a lot of exclusion, and we were like, actually, let's stop that. We're not going to exclude anybody. But that does mean, so a really good example of this is, so a child has, let's say they've broken a window. Now, you could exclude them, or you could say, actually, this child isn't coping in this environment. We've got to create a different environment and spend time with them reflecting on why what they did was not good. Yeah. So the end result might be that that child doesn't come onto site because they can't cope. But the way in which we frame it is not about you've been excluded. It's all about this environment obviously isn't working for this child. Yeah. Let's get them into an environment that they're going to engage, and then let's get them in that environment so they can reflect on what is better behaviour than what they're offering at the moment. Yeah. Yeah. And that positive language and putting it in a different framework moves you quite a distance away from, I'm big, you're small, I'm in charge, you're going to do as I tell you. And it takes a cultural thing. You have to bring it in as a culture, but it very much empowers both the adult and the child. So, going back to Bloomstein, she talks very much about a win-win situation for both the child and the adult. Yeah. But it does require the adult to have a positive outlook and requires them to want to be with the child and work with the child. So that's sort of how all that works. It's all interlinked. And when you ignore behaviour, you're purposely ignoring it. So if I go into a session and a member of staff is ignoring behaviour, they might say to me, I'm just ignoring their silly behaviour. And as long as it's safe and all the rest of it. And it's like, okay, I know that the next thing they're going to do is try and divert. Yeah. I know that they're in that cycle, or sometimes I might not have anything to offer that child. So I remember the first time, I can't remember where it came from, someone saying, actually, we don't always have something to offer. You're not always of value in a worldview. Yeah. Okay, well, I work in a team. Let's find someone who does have value in a worldview. Let's go and get someone else who can have value so that child will listen. Yeah. And so it might be that we swap in and out, and then we go into that whole nature of, okay, we can take over and we can go into divert, and that member of staff can leave the space and then we can go into challenge, ignore, divert. We just follow the same pattern.
Yeah, same pattern. That makes sense. And so with, obviously, all the kids you're working with have got special educational needs. So what makes this approach, this kind of choice-informed approach, such a good, positive way to work with SEN learners?
I think it's coming back to that risk. I mean, I'm not a huge risk taker, but I do like risks. And it does come back to that risk taking. I think, our children take risks all the time. Yes, some of them are in their bedrooms playing Xbox or whatever it is, and some of them are stuck on their phones. You could have all that adult argument about, but actually some of them are taking big risks. And, they're involved in county lines. They're involved in all sorts of behaviours that are quite unsavoury. So they're already in a heightened state in their life. And so they have often very little choice around meeting those 5 needs positively. And so it gives them a place of security and safety. We also, we don't question children. So when they come in, we definitely show an interest. But one of the positive things that they've said to visitors is, actually, I'm just accepted. Yeah. I can just be. They don't ask me 101 questions. And I think that having said that, the other side of it is we are curious about the children. We're curious as to what makes them tick. What do they do? So there has to be a genuineness about that. And I think that this approach empowers the adult to provide an environment for the child to engage. Yeah. So I know one of your podcasts recently has talked about experiential learning, experiential learning. And one of the things very much, so we have a diagram where we've got a child in the middle, and around that child is learning outdoors in a circular thing. And then you've got the EHCP, which is the hopes and dreams of a child expressed. Then we've also got experiential learning, and then we've got a creative curriculum. And all of that is, a child will move between depending on what state they're in, depending on where phase they are. Typically a child will start to panic towards the end of year 10 as to what they're going to do. They might then engage with their work, and then they'll probably disengage around April when they realise actually that big world is going to come upon them. Yeah. And they're going to need different support. So a child flexes their emotions and their engagement as they go through the course of schooling. And so to be able to have a theory like choice theory, empowering that child to make choices according to where they are, is the only way we can see as providing a positive outcome for the child. Because otherwise, if you have it in this strict Victorian designed manner that we've got for 80% of our children, if a child doesn't have that skill set, they're going to drown. Yeah. And they're going to disengage. Yeah, exactly. And that kind of skill set, when we take kids outdoors, which obviously you do quite a lot with Releasing Potential, is it the fact that they are being given the freedom to make the choice, which makes it so effective doing outdoors as well? That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, look, I think we also, yes, I think we have to be really honest and say, I'm just thinking of an incident last week where a child was breaking arrows. It's like, there are some times when it's thoroughly irritating. Let's not be rose tinted about it. Yeah, let's not paint a lovely picture. Yeah. Absolutely not. So, and I think that it really comes about choosing. So we have a whole outdoor curriculum, and it's about making sure a child is participating in the correct activities, but also making sure the activities are not just taster sessions. It's so easy to do with our types of children it's just it's almost at that taster level. Whereas actually what we really want is we want the child to see that they've progressed and that we can say, oh, look, 8 weeks ago, this is where you're at. And now this is where you're at.
Yeah.
And that's right across the board, whether it's, an outdoor living type program or whether it's paddling or whatever it is, if they can see progress. So years ago now, Portsmouth City Council did a study on their children, and what they found is the key thing the children were missing was aspiration. They were missing aspiration. And I think that as educationalists, we need to provide aspiration. So actually, are your staff team going paddling at the weekend? Are they doing stuff that's exciting so that children go, oh, maybe one day I want to do that? Yeah.
And I think particularly with SEN kids, isn't there? There's some research, isn't there, about how aspirations for kids in special schools is quite low for the child, but often for the parent as well, what they think their child is capable of achieving. And it feels like it's quite important to try and raise those aspirations and the ideas of what they could maybe achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And whether your child has, a medical syndrome, whether it's a physical disability, whatever it is, on the whole, as a family unit, you're probably going to be on survival mode for a significant percentage of the time together. Yeah. So actually, aspiration seems a luxury. So, if we as educators can be the one to give aspiration, we can help that family unit in thinking, actually, there are other options out there.
There are other things, which is really important. When we initially connected on LinkedIn, you spoke about using Glasser's theory as a kind of vehicle for change. So I'm wondering about how you use your position within the IOL and within your work at Releasing Potential to kind of promote these approaches, and what did you kind of mean by a vehicle for change?
Yeah, so I'm sure there are other theories out there that have a very similar outcome, philosophy. I guess one of the vehicles for change is this whole thing around not restraining and giving children a choice. And that's a massive risk. We are risking it. But so with all of our children, considering where they come from, this year I've had one incident of a child punching another child. Yeah. And that's just, in their schools, they've been excluded for fighting. Yeah. And so I guess the vehicle for change is the fact, look, I know this framework works. I know that if you can hold that behaviour for both staff and children, you can actually allow a child to move away from a punitive experience of education to a reward and aspiration experience of education. And it's got to be interlinked with other things. So, for example, I'm a big advocate of the teapot or making proper coffee in a coffee pot. And the reason for that is, yes, I like tea and coffee, but is actually if I make a pot of tea and I pour it for myself and someone else walks in the door, I immediately can offer them a cup of tea. Now, I might waste a lot of tea in my time, but actually what you're immediately doing is welcoming someone into your environment. You're saying immediately, okay, here you are, I am going to, and the other side of that is I would expect a child to go, I'll make tea, and you have to accept it. So I've had milk put into cafetières, I've had sugars in my tea, which I hate, all sorts of things. But what you're doing is you're working together under the same framework and expectation. You're not saying, so it's about doing education with a child, not to a child. Yeah. You're traveling together with providing that experience. So I guess it's giving a framework for us to be different from that 80% of children who are receiving a very Victorian-based approach where if you step out of line, you will be punished. And actually, it provides that framework to be able to give a child choice.
Nice. And are you hoping to influence more people to be aware of this kind of theory and take it on in their teaching?
Yeah, so what we'd really like, is so in the Institute for Outdoor Learning, we've started an alternative provision group, and that's for those people who are purposefully delivering alternative provision for children who are registered at a school, but it forms part of their school experience.
Yeah, so that's 15% that you were telling me about at the beginning.
Yeah, so that 15%.
Yeah.
That tier 2 child. And, obviously some of them are tier 3 as well. And what we want to do with this group, we want to draw together wisdom, knowledge, voice, and just almost, if you like, friendship, where we can go. So quite often I've been to a lot of SEN functions, and people almost show off about how bad their children are. And it's this competitive, oh no, my child's done this. And, we don't really talk about the fact that, one of our children's in prison because of some misdemeanor that, etc. What we want to do is go, these are our children. We are all concerned with this type of child. And actually, this is coming down the track from the government, or this is what's happening to the DfE, or, these are my experiences. Anybody else experience that? Or someone might be able to go, I've got some safeguarding training coming up. Does anybody want to do it? Or someone goes, what's a DSL? And you go, well, it's a designated safeguarding lead, and they could do training, and it's not about, it's about, we all have arrived at working with these children for different reasons and different methodologies, but actually there's a common theme around connecting with the 15 or total 20% of the children's population in education. And it'd be great if we could draw all that knowledge together and just support each other. And when the government say we want to come up with a new system for unregulated alternative provision, we can then contribute to that discussion. So
from the ground,
so that is the idea, and it's certainly not. I don't think any one of us is coming up, you must do it like this, because everything has to reflect the characters involved. It is just about drawing together. And I know that you guys have got your conference coming up in a few weeks' time. And, that's about drawing people together, isn't it? It's about saying, this is alternative provision. This is really good practice that we've seen. And it might be that my approach doesn't suit someone else's character. Well, that's fine. But it might be that there's just a nugget of an idea in it that someone else takes away. So it's that's the purpose of it, really.
Nice. That kind of community and collaboration. Sharing ideas and things. Brilliant. And if someone did want to, it's a survey, isn't it, that they can take, they can just get in touch with the IOL to.
So if you go Insitute of Outdoor Learning and then look under community, and there's a drop down under community, and there's a bit there that says alternative provision, that will give you some details. You can contact the office and they'll give you some more details as well.
Fantastic. Before we wrap up, are there any future plans for releasing potential that you'd like to share with us, or just anything else in general that we haven't talked about that you did think you might want to mention?
I think I've mentioned a lot. I guess, we want to strengthen the school. Definitely very interested in working with girls, because that's around where we are. Girls are not given options like boys. So it'd be really good to I'd like to explore that a bit more. Interesting, several of our boys, they will start as their gender identification as boys. We've had several that will identify as girls as part of their process, which actually I'm very proud of, because I think that we provide them an environment to choose to do that.
Well, they feel safe. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So really like to look at that. Would really like to, we have several outdoor sites, but I'd really like to come up with our own outdoor centre of some sort, where a lot of this alternative provision is based. And then I think alternative provision, the government are definitely signalling that a significant part of tier 2 provision will move back into schools or under school control.
Yeah.
We as a charity are only focused on tier 3. And so I'd really like to explore how we develop that services our local schools, particularly targeting SEN schools where, and obviously, we've had alpacas in the past. We've got goats at the moment. I think we're going to have a variety of animals arriving at our farm over the next 8 months. So you've got those are
busy times ahead of you then, it sounds like.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, excellent. And you're off to the farm in a minute to see
Yes,
the goats.
I am off to the farm where the goats and rabbits and guinea pigs and chickens at the moment. So yes, off there soon.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Mike. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Oh, it's been great. It's been, I think by doing the podcast, really have spent the last few weeks just really thinking, okay, who are we? You know, what, so it's been a really good exercise for me.
Oh, excellent. That's what we want to hear. And I've been finishing up by asking everyone these 3 questions because it's a nice kind of way to end things. And, I say this several podcasts, it's just stupid asking people how they relax because everyone I talk to is so busy, but we'll ask anyway, how do you relax?
I was thinking about this and I was thinking, well, so yesterday, how did I relax? I actually hoovered my van out because it was bright and sunny. I wanted something productive to do, but I didn't really want to go, So I guess it's almost the mundane. It is almost the mundane that you just go, oh, okay, that sense of feeling active but productive at the same time, whether that's a dog walk or something.
Yeah. My favourite answer to this question was a lady from the Eden Project, and she said, when I said, how do you relax? She said, outdoors and in motion. I thought, well, that's quite, that covers the whole breadth of things, but suits a lot of us, I think.
I would relate.
And what are you reading or listening to right now?
So I'm reading Rory Stewart's book called The Places in Between, which is when he walked from one side of Afghanistan to another.
Okay.
And just his experience of meeting different tribal groups and how he negotiated his way across. It's just fascinating and making you realise, I mean, I don't know if you know, he's got his own massive podcast, political one, but just realising just how clever he is in being able to understand cultures and language and people. So that's really good. Enjoying that at the moment. Excellent.
And finally, why is being outdoors important to you?
So for me, it sounds really cliched, but it probably centres my world. And so there's been some studies around how the colour green has a real impact on, so we see more shades of green than any other colour, is what the study says. And equally, green is a very good relaxing colour. And I think there's just something about, so last night I was at the farm, my daughter works at the farm at the weekends, so I take her there and invariably get sucked in. And you're sat there as the sun goes down, bright orange skies, in a green field, surrounded by trees all the way around. And it just sort of, it's like taking a deep breath. and just and so I guess it's that place to go to that I feel safest. Equally, it's that place to go to where I feel most scared. So it actually centres those both ends of those emotions.
Balances it out. Brilliant. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Mike. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say at the conference in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, it'll be really good. It'll be great to meet the rest of your team and yourself in person and just, be amongst outdoor enthusiasts. So if anyone's listening, that's 24th of February at Thomas Hall School. The next day we've got an outdoor learning conference. So Mike will be there and some other fantastic speakers. So it should be a good day. Yeah, great. Well, thank you ever so much for inviting me.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for giving up some time. No, I really enjoyed it. A massive thank you to Mike King for joining me so bright and early on a Monday morning to talk about his work at Releasing Potential, his experience of outdoor education and SEND education, and of course, thank you for the discussion around Glass's choice theory. I really enjoyed discussing another educational approach. Really hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode, and if you did, as always, we'd love it if you would share it with your friends, like it, subscribe to the podcast, rate it, and do all those things that mean that more people will find us. We'll be back in a fortnight with another episode, but until then, thanks for listening.